We're going to change things up just a little bit today. We're going to start with a picture of Baltimore Community High School, as you see on the screen right now. And we're going to do some things to it in GIMP to make it look a little bit more artistic, a little bit more interesting. So we're going to start with this sort of normal picture. It's actually a panorama, which means I took several pictures of the front of the school and I stitched them together with a program. And we're going to move towards something that looks first something that looks more like this. Okay, you can already see the lines have gotten a little bit fuzzier. It looks a little bit more like a painting. And here I've actually gone through and I've added a lot of color, a lot of paint. It's not supposed to look realistic anymore. I'm sort of trying to make it into a piece of art that's expressive and interesting looking and whatever. The point today is not for you to look at mine and make it look exactly the same. Rather, the point is for you to take the image and change it in a way that's meaningful to you and that is artistic on its own. Eventually, I actually ended up cropping the picture, and this was sort of, I wouldn't call it a final copy because I definitely haven't finished all the things that I want to try with it yet. It's still a work in progress, but this is sort of the kind of thing we'll be doing today. We're still going to be using GIMP, so go ahead and open up GIMP. You should have already gone to Schoology and downloaded the original picture that's not been changed yet. And I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to open up that sort of unchanged picture. Mine is in a different folder than yours will be. Yours was probably in the Downloads folder, so you go to My Documents and go to Downloads. Mine is actually in a totally different place on the computer. So I have the photo open here. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crop this picture. You'll recall that cropping is sort of cutting the picture. I don't think I need this entire long stretch of picture for what I want to accomplish. Over in the toolbox, the crop tool is right here. So I'm going to click that tool, and I'm going to take from about here, I'm going to draw a box for the parts that I actually want to include. I'm going to draw about here. It gives you a sort of preview, which you can still modify if you want to by dragging these boxes. And when you're ready, you press Enter to confirm the crop. There we go. That's a much easier canvas to work with. The next step I want to do is I'm actually going to take this picture and run it through a filter. You all have already played with filters in some of your previous projects, and the one that I'm going to use might be familiar to you. So I'm going to click on Filters, Artistic, and I'm going to use the one called Oilify. The point of Oilify filter is to make the picture look as though it was an oil painting. So I'm going to open up the dialog box for this. And you get a preview box here, so you can move these sliders to see different parts of the picture and how they're going to look once we've finished running them through the Oilify feature. And the main option we have here is the mask size. Mask size determines how oilified it actually is. And the further over I go, the more oilified it's going to look. For the purposes of this project, I don't want a whole lot of oilification. I just want to keep it over here around, probably around 8 or 9. And you'll see that I still have some of the details present when I do that. I'm going to actually click down lower and see what 6 looks like. I'm going to stay with 7, I think. I'm going to press OK. And this is going to take a minute or two because this is a large picture and it's doing a lot of work to it. On the bottom part of the screen, you'll see the slider bar moving across as the painting is oilified. It might take a minute or two. So at the moment, I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'll come back when it's finished oilifying. Okay, I'm back, and our picture's been oilified. It might not seem like a very drastic change to you, but I'm going to go ahead and press Control-Z. I'm going to undo the oilification so you can see what it actually looks like. Okay, and notice the lines look a lot more clean, the sign's easier to read, and it just looks more like a photograph. If I press Control-Y to redo the oilification, give it a second, the change is slight, but it is noticeable. So we're going to start with this sort of oilified base to our picture, and we're going to move on from here. Now I'm going to introduce you to the main tool we'll be using today, and that's the paintbrush. Of course, we've used a paintbrush before, but we really haven't tapped into its full power. So after I've clicked on the paintbrush, its options show up down here in the bottom of the toolbox, and you'll see there are several things that we can work with. The mode, the opacity, the brush, its scale, and then a few options down here, one called Brush Dynamics and a few radio boxes that we can check or uncheck down here. First of all, I want to talk about the brush. I've gone around and I've installed many different brushes into your GIMP. Some very interesting ones. So you'll see that these are all the different brush shapes that we have, and there really are a lot of them. So if I were to choose one, for example, that looks like this Asian character, that will actually, I could actually paint that onto the picture using the paintbrush. And we're going to have a lot of projects that involve using different brushes later on in the semester. The brushes I'm looking for, I think they're buried about halfway down the list. Yeah, they're right around here. These brushes are made to look like paint strokes, as though you took a paintbrush, dipped it in paint, and then drug it across the screen. So I'm going to grab one that I like right here and show you what I mean. Okay, so this is the default size for this stroke. The scale right now is set on 1, so if I click the button one time, that's what I get. Of course, by changing the scale, I can have different sizes. And of course, right now my color is set on red. If I change the color to sort of a green color, that's what I'll get instead. So these are the main brushes that I'm going to use today. And I want to point out a few more features that they have. Opacity is how clear or how transparent the brush is. Right now it's set at 100%, so I can see it's fully thick. If I turn the opacity down, it makes it more see-through. So if I go to about 50, you can tell the difference between this one and this one. This one with the opacity of 50 is much more see-through. It's much more transparent. For the most part today, I'm going to go ahead and keep my opacity turned on to 100. Now I'm going to open up this little Brush Dynamics dialog box by clicking on the plus. And this opens up some neat options. I'm going to come down here to where it says Random, and I'm going to tell it that I want the size and the color to be random. And now when I come back up, and I'll go ahead and turn my scale back up so you can see it easier, I'm going to go ahead and click a couple times. Okay? And you can tell that each time I clicked, the size changed slightly. So I went from this to a little smaller, to even smaller over here. And the color changed just slightly each time too. This is important because an oil painter wouldn't have the same exact color all around his painting. Having different levels of green or whatever color you want is going to make it look more realistic. So I'm going to keep these two boxes checked most of the time. If it becomes important for me to have the exact size that I want on a certain area, I'm going to turn that off. Or if there's a certain color I want each time, I'm going to turn that off as well. Another good example of the Brush Dynamics, I can take the paintbrush and hold the button down and move it across the screen. And it will continually put new brush strokes on the screen. And as you can see, if we get closer, it's changing up the size and the color each time. I'm going to go ahead and press Ctrl Z and get rid of that. One more feature I want to show you is this thing called Fade Out. Fade Out does exactly what it sounds like it does. It fades eventually. So instead of being able to pull the brushstroke all the way across the screen, eventually it faded out, and as it faded out, it got much lighter. That's how a real paintbrush would work if you think about it. The paint on the end of the brush would begin to fade as the paint ran out, and you'd have to go and dip your paintbrush back in the paint again. I can control how long the fade is through here, and you'll notice it's in pixels. So here, it took 200 pixels before the paintbrush faded out completely. If I were to change it to 500 pixels, oops, and bring my paintbrush up, you'd see it went much longer before it eventually faded to nothing. And I can control how long I want that to be depending on the circumstance that I have going at the moment. Now that we have the technical stuff out of the way, it's time to get creative. And really this is up to you. I don't really have anything else to show you. The whole point of this assignment is that you're going to take this canvas, this picture of Baltimore community, and you're going to do something interesting with it by painting. So you can decide what colors you want to have in the sky and how faded you want them to be. If you want it to be realistic or sort of crazy. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. But I do want to see that you've changed most of the image. You're going to find that certain parts are harder to change than others. In my picture, I left the bushes alone because I could not find a way to make the bushes look interesting. Maybe you will find a way to make the bushes look interesting. But most of this image should have paint on it. Not all of it, but most. So sit down, think for a moment, and when you're ready, start experimenting. Whenever you make a mistake or something you don't like, remember you can always press Ctrl-Z to undo whatever you've done. So, have fun, be creative, and let's see what you can come up with. One more thing before you send this on to me on Schoology. I want you to sign the bottom of your picture. So if you take the text tool, you can draw a box down here. And in the little dialog box that pops up, you can type in your name. You can change the font over here to change how big it is. You can change the color, the font, and then go ahead and save it as a JPEG file and send it to me on Schoology.